Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to listen to an Encore presentation of our Adagio DocStore launch webinar. For those of you who signed up for the initial version and got bounced because it was full, that was unexpected for us, and we're happy to do this presentation again. It is live. We are, Warren will be going through the presentation as he did a couple of weeks ago, and while he's giving the presentation, I'm sitting quietly in the background, available to answer questions that you can enter into the question panel. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Warren and let him begin and show you around the dashboard, and I hope you enjoy the presentation today. Warren, take it away.
Thanks, Andrew. Really appreciate it. And welcome everyone who's taken some time out of your busy day to attend the Adagio DocStore webinar with us. As Andrew alluded to, when you signed up and are logged into the webinar, you'll have a little control panel that allows you to control your audio. And if you have any questions at all during the session, there's a questions area where you can type that in. And we encourage you, you don't have to wait till the end of the session in order to ask that question. Make sure that you ask that right away, and you may get your question answered very quickly and certainly by the end of the session, so you don't have to wait your turn at the end. So yeah, absolutely bring those things through anytime during the hour, and Andrew and others will be monitoring those questions throughout the session. We'll be recording this session as well, in addition to the one that we did a couple weeks ago. So this is available for review at a later time, if in case you just happen to miss something and you would like to repeat that, and that video will be available for you. So we're really pleased to introduce Adagio DocStore to the Adagio line. It brings a whole raft of wonderful functionality to your accounting. It'll make it a dream to look up those documents that instead of having to go through that filing cabinet, you can use the electronic means of PDFs in order to retrieve those transactions and see them directly in your accounting. So our agenda for today, we're in the midst of introduction, and we'll briefly take a look at the actual DocStore program itself. There's not too much there, but just identify that there is an actual program with a couple of settings to put on there. We'll be spending most of our time in the actual Adagio modules. We'll be in Payables and in Ledger, and show you how DocStore enables some wonderful functionality. And then finally, if there's any unanswered questions at the end, or we'll go over some questions, we'll have some time to do that at the end of the session. So filing, that's just a wonderful task that every accounting department seems to have to deal with. And it's great to have your documents and your paper organized, so you can go look for that. But these days, having storage for all these boxes and filing cabinets and historical years, so you have 7 years worth of these boxes, and having to find the paper and spending all the time and actually putting it in organized fashion so you can retrieve it, that's a lot of time spent. There's lots of better ways to be spending your time than going through these filing cabinet boxes. And we hope that Adagio DocStore will alleviate this hassle for you. And we hope that the next 30 to 45 minutes of the presentation will really awaken some things that will get you excited about being able to do electronic document storage. Before we actually get into the presentation, I like to know kind of an idea of who's in our audience. And so I just like to open a quick poll to be able just to see, for those of you who are in the audience today, who's had the opportunity to see Adagio DocStore? Is this an absolutely brand new first time look? Have you watched the videos in the teaser on YouTube? Perhaps your Adagio consultant has given you a demonstration, or you've even downloaded it and got it installed. So I'm just curious to know who's with us today. I see about 3/4 of you already voted, so that's fabulous. Just wait until we get closer into the 80s. All right, just maybe a couple more seconds if you want to have that last little click. And that's good. I think we're at 85, and so that's good. So thank you for letting me know. Just so you know who's in the audience today, good 2/3 of you almost are first-time viewers, and some other of you have also watched it in a little other way. So that's fabulous. It's fun to be able to show this for the first time. So what is this Adagio DocStore? Let's take a look and see what you can actually do. So for example, you're in Adagio Payables, and you've just received via mail an invoice from one of your vendors. So what you can do is, of course, you can do the transaction entry, but to get started, you can look for PDF, either saved on your system, or you can even attach it to a local scanner. So we'll just bring that in. You can hear the scanner going in the background. And in just a moment, the preview will come up. There we go. And you can see it's expense to a particular account. Let's go ahead and save that. And now we can actually drive the transaction entry with a screen on here. So we can see that's for easy office supplies. Oops. And we'll make that document number, oops, 9206, there we go, just got to find it there. And our distribution, it's for $448. If you can see that total at the bottom with their $20 of GST broken out, excellent. And now we've got the transaction saved and already linked to a scanned document from paper that arrived on your desktop. That's pretty cool. Perhaps you are asked the question, we've just done a payment and we want to know what invoices were paid. Well, you've always been able to go into the vendor and the transactions and take a look at the manual check to see a list of invoice numbers that have been paid. But perhaps you'd like to know what actually was on those documents. Well, now it's possible to view not only the payment advice, or the remittance, but you can actually browse through all the different transactions that were paid by that payment. Or perhaps you're in the financial statement and you see a number on a financial statement that doesn't seem to make sense. Well, you've always been able to drill down into a financial reporter and take a look at the invoices that make up those amounts. But now you can add a document link column and actually view that document within the drill down of the financial statement. We think that this and many other questions can much more easily be answered by an image of documents rather than just simply a record on a grid. So what actually is Adagio DocStore? There's a sneak peek. Adagio DocStore is essentially a virtual filing cabinet of PDF documents. So rather than storing paper in your closet or in the side of your office, you can store all these PDFs in a organized fashion on your desktop, or perhaps it's on the server or some other location where you choose to store the PDFs. And they're all linked into your accounting. If you were a user of Adagio ePrint, Adagio DocStore is a program that will replace and supersede Adagio ePrint with all the features. So if you are using Adagio ePrint and you install Adagio DocStore, you won't notice any difference. Everything will continue to work exactly as it did until such time that you enable the DocStore features, and then you'll get a bunch more wonderful things. So in ePrint and in DocStore, you're always able to store management reports, your posting journals, your batch listings, your age trial balance, your detail listings as PDFs and stored and named in an organized fashion. You are always able with Adagio ePrint, and still can do with Adagio DocStore, to print a document such as an invoice or a credit note or a purchase order, and have those document printings be stored as an archived PDF. Additionally, with Adagio DocStore, you're now able to attach external documents. Perhaps they're scanned documents that you've received by your vendor by paper. Or perhaps there's additional agreements or other types of documents of any type that are stored in PDF. And the document flow is maintained so that if you want to be able to see the check that paid the invoice that was associated with a purchase order or a sales order, you can see all those documents linked together. And you can store as many documents as you want attached to a transaction or to a master record without losing any performance. You're not actually saving the PDFs within the database, you're just saving links. And so therefore it's extremely fast to save as many documents as you wish. So that's just a brief introduction to Adagio DocStore, but it's much more fun to actually take a closer look at what Adagio DocStore can do. So before we get into the actual usage, let's just actually launch Adagio DocStore. You can get it from the Adagio toolbar menu or the Adagio menu, or you can set a shortcut on your desktop. And so there's just a couple of things I wanted to show, not too much. First of all, once you've installed Adagio DocStore, there's a company profile, and similar to Adagio ePrint, there's an area on the top where you can store your management reports to various folders, either as a subfolder of your company data or as a location somewhere else. And you can set subfolders for the types of reports. So maybe your audit reports in one folder and transaction reports in another folder. The area in the bottom will be new to ePrint users, and this is a place where you enable the doc storage functionality with a checkbox that says Enable Doc Store. There's some other checkbox options too, which I won't touch on too much now, but I also just wanted to mention that this is also the identification of where you save these doc storage PDFs. You can either create a doc storage folder directly underneath your company data folder, or you can choose any other base folder, whether it's a local hard drive or whether it's on the server. Of course, if you're in a shared data usage, you'll want to have it in a shared location for everybody. So just identify that once you install DocStore, there is a checkbox that you need to turn on in order to enable the functionality. Then you've been using it for a while. If you've been using Adagio ePrint since 2011, when that product first launched, you've been saving archived PDFs. And it's possible with a click of a button to take all those archived PDFs and move them into doc storage. So you're not starting from day one today where you've installed Adagio DocStore, but you can use all of those PDFs that you've been archiving for the last number of years and have those automatically integrated using the doc storage functionality and linking. Once that's all done, whether you've run that process or you've been using doc storage for a bit, you'll be able to see the documents stored in a way that is a manner of how you would also do it when you store documents in a filing cabinet. So you have all of your documents in the grid, but perhaps maybe you want to see just those for the customers. So you have one folder for each customer by name as well as number, so it's easy to find them. Or perhaps you want to store just by vendors. And within each vendor, you might have different types of transactions, invoices, purchase orders, sales orders, or so on. And then within each one, you can actually browse and see the transactions. And here's the scanned document that I just looked at a few moments ago, and we can view that PDF and see that directly from here. So it's possible to see all these PDFs outside of the accounting itself. So if you just want to have someone be able to see these documents without actually allowing them access to Adagio Payables or Adagio Ledger or so on, then giving them access to Adagio DocStore would work. And if you're in a higher volume situation where you have lots of documents, there's also a find functionality that has Smart Finder that allows you to search for documents this way as well. Oops, sorry, there's one more thing. And lastly, if you are maintaining many years of these documents, it's also possible to archive those transactions into fiscal years or calendar years, depending whether you're using Adagio Ledger, and allow you to have all of those documents be moved from your current year to a fiscal year automatically by the document date. And so therefore, you have the opportunity of just have current year transactions in the first area of the tree, and then archival years for prior years. And we hope that that's also very convenient for you for looking for documents. So that's all I really wanted to show for the DocStore program itself. There's really not too much they're here to do. We want to spend more of our time in the actual Adagio programs themselves. So to start with, let's just take a look at an invoice batch. And as I alluded to in the introduction, the document flow of invoices and purchase orders and sales orders and payments and so on is maintained. So I've got a batch that I've retrieved from Adagio purchase orders, and the document flow that's happened there will be maintained as that invoice has been retrieved in Adagio Payables. When Adagio DocStore is integrated, anytime that there's a transaction, you'll see that there's a doc link column that you can see that there's a link, and then there will be a red glasses button that will allow you to view. And you can resize this window so it fits on your desktop however you wish. You can zoom in as well. There's also some arrows that allows you to scroll. So this particular transaction had a receipt and a purchase order combined with another receipt, another purchase order, as well as an invoice. So anywhere you see this doc link and the red glasses, you can be identified that there's something that's attached via Adagio DocStore, and so therefore you can view that. If you edit a transaction or other records, anywhere you see this paperclip is a place where you can do an attachment. So perhaps you are in a higher volume company where you have lots of paperwork and it's not convenient to scan each document as they come in. You don't want to burden the entry clerk who's doing all the scanning. So perhaps you may choose to have them have paper documents scanned to a common location, and then it's just a matter of dragging them over. If there's already documents attached, there's the maintain documents, and if we want to add a new one, you can also browse to a location. So perhaps there's a document of a packing slip that you forgot to attach earlier. And if it's a common location where once you attach it, you don't want to accidentally attach it to someone else, another transaction, then there's also a move button that will delete the PDF from the source location, your scans folder, and it will simply be moved to the new location where all the doc storage folders are saved. For this demonstration, I'll choose not to move it in this case. So when I say open, the packing slip has been added, and I can view that here along with the purchase orders and the receipts that have also been attached to this transaction. So in one case, you may choose to scan. Another case, you may choose to have someone else do all that scanning of the paperwork and just save the PDFs to a hard drive. And so therefore, you can just simply do an attachment there. I'll save that. Another thing that might happen is that your vendor has emailed you the invoice or some other document that you would like to attach. And you have the capability of taking this invoice, and on any dialog that has the paperclip, you can just highlight this and drag it and drop it directly onto the screen, and then that document will be automatically attached. So you can see invoice 66398 has been attached. And so now if we view it, we can see the invoice and then the receipt and the purchase order and the receipt and the purchase order. So you can see the document flow is being maintained as we move through the accounting. So once you do all this, I'm just going to mark this as ready to post, and I will go ahead and post this batch. And then that will get sent off to the GL, and that will be ready for retrieval when I'm ready to do that. And I'll do that just a little bit later. So you can attach transactions, PDFs to transactions. You can also attach them to master records as well. What I'm going to do is just open up the banks. And if there are documents that are specific to one of your banks, you can also attach or link transactions. So for example, if there's a particular document that's got some information that's particular to the bank, it's not a transaction, it's just simply about the bank, you can do that attachment as well. And another thing that is also interesting to know about banks is as we get into the payments, there's an additional specification that you might want to set up that would be essentially a remittance advice that allows you, every time that you print a check or do an electronic fund transfer, it will automatically generate a PDF for the doc storage. And so you might want to create a remittance advice type specification, and then every time that check is printed or EFT'd, then that PDF will be generated. And so it's just a matter of creating that new specification and attaching it here. So we go into the system check processing, the check run. I'll just do that here. And we're ready to generate the list. Here's the one I just entered a little while ago. If you're curious about whether or not you want to pay a particular invoice and you highlight it, you can see there's that doc storage view again. So you can see the invoice itself in order to identify whether or not that's a payment that you want to make for that particular invoice, and not just looking at a grid and an invoice number. If you use payment control, you can also view doc storage to the invoice off of payment control. If you're doing EFT, the same sort of thing would work. I don't think I have this particular sample data company set up for EFT, but if you're doing EFT transfers, that exact same process would be available, limited to just those vendors that you set up EFT. Same thing for manual check entry. I'll go ahead and edit a batch. And we can see we've got one cash invoice that's got an invoice transaction already attached to it. Let's go ahead and do a payment as well. And let's just do the vendor that we've been looking at, Easy Office Supplies. And if we take a look here, we're going to be doing a payment. And if we take a look down the bottom, the different transactions that are available to pay, there's also attachments for the payment. And you can also view the invoice that you're about to pay within a manual check batch. So I'm just going to go ahead and pay both of those invoices. We're going to print the check, and this is our demo payment. Okay. So there's actually nothing linked to the invoice at the payment at this point until you actually print the check. So let's go ahead and do that. We can do EFT or print. There's nothing to EFT here, so we'll just be doing a printing. So I'll go ahead and do that. Just take a couple of moments for the screen to wake up. So if it was been EFT or printing the checks off to the printer, were the checks printed correctly? Yes. If you say yes to this, then that will obviously set the payment statuses, but it will also generate the doc storage PDF. Additional forms are available to be printed. These will not generate doc storage PDFs. It's just the main payment that will do that. I'll just choose no for now. And clear advice information, of course, we always have to do that. So now if we take a look at the check, now we can see there's both linked. And here's our demo payment. So there's our payment advice, the doc storage specification that was set up on the bank, and the invoice that we paid. Oops. And then there's some receipts, and a purchase order that was all attached to that. So you can see that the document flow has also been maintained here. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and post this batch so I can update the vendors and also update the Adagio ledger retrieval batch as well. So I'll go ahead and post that. The posting journal. So now that's been sent off to the vendor. Well, why don't we take a look and see what's on the vendor now? So I'll just close the batches and we'll open up the vendors and Easy Office Supplies. Before I look at the transactions, vendors are also a type of record where you may choose to attach and view PDFs that aren't necessarily specific to a transaction, but may be interesting to the vendor. So perhaps you have a service agreement with a vendor and you want to have that document viewable rather than having to search for that. Or maybe you've got a voided check, what you've sent to the vendor. So anything that's not transaction-based, you may choose to attach to the vendor directly. You'll see that for customers when Adagio Receivables is at version 9.3a, and you'll see that in other master records as functionality gets added. On the Transactions tab, whether you're looking at payables or purchase orders, you can choose to view transactions. As far as the payables transactions are concerned, it's also not too late to do attaching here. So if you've forgotten to attach something at the batch level, you still have the opportunity after it's been posted to do an attachment now. Or you can also do a view. So we've gone through a lot of different places in payables that gets touched by Adagio DocStore. And there's different ways that you can attach transactions as well. So I'm just going to quickly go back to the PowerPoint. And now that we've seen a little bit, and you see that attaching documents to the accounting could be pretty interesting, what I like to do is just open up a poll, just ask how might your company choose to attach documents? And maybe there's more than one way. I'd just be curious what sort of initial thoughts that you have right now. I'll just wait for that responses to vote. See, there's a few coming in, and choose all to apply. All right, so we're probably about 2/3 of the voting now, so I'll just give it a couple more moments to get everyone have a chance. When you have more than one checkbox, it takes a little longer. Okay, so we're about 3/4 now. That's probably a pretty good thought. So why don't I go ahead and close this, and we'll share the attendees' thoughts. And so for the people in the audience today, almost every one of you thought that scanning will be something that you'll be using. Also, the ability of dragging for email, because you get lots of invoices from your emails, and also browsing for saved PDFs and printing. So I'll highlight the fact that anywhere that, as long as you have the archive PDF feature turned on, any document you print, whether it's an order entry, sales order, or a invoice or a credit note, those will automatically be saved. So we'll be doing that anyway. And depending on your volume, you may find that browsing for saved PDFs from a share folder is easier than doing it one-off. But of course, your volume will dictate that. Wonderful. So before I move on to Ledger, I also just wanted to highlight, I just forgot to mention this before, that when you import invoices or manual checks, you also have the ability to attach PDF. So if you know that you have PDFs that are saved on your hard drive and you'd like to attach them as part of an import, you can choose a fully specified path, including the file name, to the PDF that you'd like to attach to the imported invoice or manual check. So that's one more way that you might choose to attach PDFs to your documents if you import from a different system. So before moving to Ledger, I'd just like to find out if there's any questions that have been asked so far. I see that it's been quite active. If there's anything of general interest before we move on to the next step.
Well, Warren, there have been quite a few questions that have come in while you've been showing. One that comes up every so often is CRA or IRS requirements for electronic document storage. This is, of course, you may have professional requirements for saving documents. A DocStore addresses specifically the finding the source document when looking at the accounting transaction. You may have other requirements. CRA on its website says that you must maintain the document in its original form of presentation, which in theory means you have to keep a version of Outlook 97 running to show them the email that your invoice was presented on. But basically, in all of our discussions with people who have talked to CRA, that the feedback has been that you have to make a complete cutover to electronic storage if you're going to go entirely paperless. And we feel that most of organizations running Adagio will run in a hybrid mode. I will say that in chatting with an Adagio site that had been paperless for several, not paperless, but had been storing electronic documents electronically for several years, they scanned their documents and carefully filed them away electronically and then dropped the piece of paper into a single box marked with the fiscal year, so that to the extent that any auditor wanted to see the original source document, they could plow their way through a big box of individual pieces of paper if they felt that the electronic copy was insufficient. The other thing that I just want to reiterate that Warren's pointed out is that the attachment of linked documents and related documents is all handled automatically for you by Adagio. You're not having to maintain any of that. Once you've attached a document to an invoice, it'll automatically be there for you when you look at the check that paid that invoice. So I think other than that, Warren, it's been there's been a lot of questions coming in. I noticed a couple more have come in while I've been chatting away here. There are no limits to the size of the document that you attach, and the documents are stored in a separate location from your accounting data. So if you're doing a backup, you're not backing up the documents which are have to be handled separately. One of the things that is unique about, or not unique about documents, is that the folders that store your electronic document images are not very volatile. Once a document has been stored away in a folder, it tends to sit there undisturbed for many years. We never, even if you delete a linked document from an Adagio transaction, we do not delete the PDF out of the doc storage folder. We only delete the related links out of the Adagio accounting. So the documents are there until you specifically go through and either run the data integrity check function in Adagio DocStore, which will identify any orphan PDFs that are in the doc storage space that aren't link to, or you go in and delete them one by one. So I'll let you continue, Warren, and I'll answer the other few questions that have come in while I've been chatting.
Wonderful, thanks. Yeah, keep those questions coming. It's wonderful to see the engagement, and all your questions and comments are wonderfully welcome. So yes, please keep those coming. So the next area I just want to briefly show is Adagio Ledger. And as I had mentioned as I was posting transactions, whenever those transactions have been posted that had DocStore links, those will come through to be able to retrieve into Adagio Ledger. I should mention that, of course, you can choose to keep your transaction details in detail, or some sites choose to consolidate their GL transactions. If you choose to consolidate, you will not lose your document links. So you will continue to be able to view PDFs in Adagio Ledger even though you've chosen to consolidate. The drawback is that all the transactions that have been consolidated together will have all of those PDFs available in one view. So if you've got a check that's printed, say, 50 invoices, and you've consolidated that with other checks to the bank account, then all the checks and all of those invoices will be available in one view. And that could be overwhelming and might be difficult to wade through all of those. So that's just a trade-off in regards to doing consolidation, is that you'll have a lot of transaction PDFs to wade through. However, it is still possible to maintain those. So that's just a consideration. I'm going to go ahead and retrieve these transactions from Payables and order entry, which also supports document linking. And those transactions have been retrieved to their various batches. And as we take a look in, and we'll just make this, here's our payment batch number 3, and you can see that there's the view, and we can see there's the payment advice and the invoices that were paid for that one. If it's still not too late to attach transactions in the Adagio Ledger batch, the paperclip is there to do maintain documents. And just to allude to what Andrew had just been mentioning a little bit before, if there's one or more attachments onto a particular transaction, when you click the paperclip, this maintain documents window will come up, and you can view those transactions. You can reorder them with these arrow keys here. It's also possible to replace a PDF, so maybe you realize that you've attached the wrong one by mistake. It's not too late to replace them or to delete them or rename the PDF. Perhaps that this file name is not descriptive enough, so you can choose to rename from here. If you have more than one selected, you may choose to merge them together. So that will actually merge the PDFs, and instead of scrolling through them left-right, that will view them up-down on a scroll bar. So it's also a preference if you'd like to merge multiple documents together. So there's a couple of features here within the maintain documents dialog allowing maintenance of those particular PDFs that have been attached to this transaction. Similarly, any transactions for order entry or payables, or at this time, purchase orders. Those are the 3 modules that have DocStore capabilities. Receivables, invoices will be next. I'm going to go ahead and post the payables batches just to get them in. So I'll just make sure that they're all ready to post. And I'll multi-select all those 3 and post those off. And I can view these transactions that have been posted, including the document links. So from the view account transactions, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to my marked account, so it's easier to find it in the demo. And any transactions that have a document link, you can still add a doc link columns to see them. And when one is highlighted, you can choose to view the transactions from the posted GL. You can see, yes, it's been expensed to the proper account, so we're happy with that. And as we saw earlier in the teasers, if I choose to open the financial reporter, you can choose to customize the transaction details drill down of the financial statement and include a document link column along with, so that is what you need to do in order to make sure that if you want to use drill down and view DocStore, that this doc link column is checked off in the drill down customization. And anytime you drill down, whether you do it from the list of the posted transactions, or if you drill down even further to the balanced GL entry, both of those support the doc link look. So I can just click one of those in order to see the transaction. So that's one other external place where you can see. You can also use Adagio Grid View version 9.3 in order to view PDFs that are attached to transactions. I happen to have just a very simple vendor transactions workspace set up. And so I've got my vendor list. I'll just drill down and see here's all of the list of my transactions for that particular vendor. And there's a doc link column that allows you to view that invoice directly from within a grid view. So yeah, this is another external place to the accounting where you can have someone be able to see a list of transactions and view a PDF or document flow, and but not actually have access to the live accounting. Well, this is pretty cool. So perhaps some of you are thinking, oh, I need to get this. So how do you get this? If you've been using Adagio ePrint and you are on a current upgrade plan at the end of 2017, you will have already received your upgrade email. And so you can download DocStore and install it, and it's yours. If you haven't been using Adagio ePrint, the retail price of Adagio DocStore is $3,200 Canadian or US, plus the additional upgrades maintenance fee of $640. So your initial outlay is $3,840. If you're an Adagio Cloud user, Adagio ePrint is part of the core suite, but if you'd like to upgrade that to Adagio Cloud, it's an additional $80 per month. The one caveat about using DocStore on the Adagio Cloud implementation is that scanning directly within an application is not currently supported because it has to be able to find the locally attached scanners, and that's just not possible right now. Certainly you can scan them to a common location and do the drag and drop or search for PDFs that have been scanned, but the actual live scanning within the application is not quite there yet. So please make sure that if this is something that's interesting, contact your Adagio consultant right away, either for a demonstration or to place the order. We hope that Adagio DocStore is something that's just going to make it a lot easier to look for things and store things and find things for your documents within your accounting. And we're really proud of Adagio DocStore, and we hope that you're excited to take a closer look or even to move forward. So that's really it for the demonstration. I think we've ended pretty close on time. So now's the chance if there's any final questions that you'd like to ask, whether, Andrew, if you want to bring some to the public, or whether we're just making sure that they're answered on the questions box before we end the session. Now's the time. So thank you so much for being here today, and let's just see if there's any more questions.
I think that mostly the two questions that have occurred a couple of times is about accounts receivable and whether DocStore is compatible with accounts receivable. Accounts receivable has always, and invoices, have always attached copies of documents that are produced within Adagio itself to the transaction. So if you printed an invoice, in invoices it would be attached, an image of that PDF would be attached to AR, and that will continue to work. AR 9.3 and Invoices 9.3 are currently in development, and when those modules ship, you will be able to attach externally produced documents to the transaction. So, for example, in your cash batch, you could scan images of the customer's checks and attach them to the cash receipt transaction, and those images would flow through Adagio. So the actual attachment of external documents does not happen within an Adagio module until it's at the 9.3 level, and there's some other development that's being done within accounts receivable and Invoices 9.3 around electronic credit card processing. So we expect those modules to be available next in the series. DocStore, with its external document attachment, is available in purchase orders, order entry, accounts payable, and the general ledger. To reiterate the comment made by Warren, we will be uploading a copy of the webinar for you to review. We've had 2 people ask about OCR within Adagio DocStore. We do not support OCR of the invoices. There are products out there that will do OCR for those of you that are processing hundreds and thousands of invoices a month, and they're quite spectacular to watch. But I will tell you that they kind of start at $25,000 US and work up from there. So that pays for quite a lot of clerical time in most organizations. I thank you very much all for coming, and there will be a follow-up email that you get as a result of attending the webinar. It'll have a link to the recorded webinar, and I will also post a link to the recorded webinar on the SoftTrack tech support forums as soon as it's available, so you'll be able to check there too. So thank you very much, everyone who's coming, and I think that we got most of the other questions answered, and so we should call this a wrap. Let everyone get back and have a nice cup of coffee for first thing in the morning. Thanks, everybody. Warren, I think you can end the webinar.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for everyone. Look forward to hearing your comments and questions, and have a wonderful day. Take care.